Hello and welcome to another quick video from Charles Cox Group. Today we're going to be talking about Section 20 Landlord and Tenant Act. So we're going to give a brief overview of it. If you do want any more information, please do go to our website, have a look at all the various contacts in there, and if you're still confused, feel free to give us a call, drop us a line, pick our brains. There are potential minefield of various bits of the Section 20 legislation to get your head around. So today we're only really going to touch on the kind of key points for it. So what is Section 20? So basically it's a piece of legislation that prevents the freeholder for the building, whether you've collectively enfranchised or whether you still have a freeholder or whatever your setup is, it prevents them automatically just spending money without consultation to the leaseholders. So remember, you've got two hats on. If you are a enfranchised building, so you own your freehold, you also are the freeholder in one sense, and you're also the leaseholder. So it doesn't stop people complaining that you haven't done the process properly if you are also the freeholder. So if you're like shareholders, for instance, quite common, someone disagrees with the way something's been handled, but they can represent themselves as a leaseholder and a shareholder. So it's quite important to note that bit at the beginning there. If you're a freeholder and it's a pretty standard normal setup, then obviously it's pretty plain to see that you've got a freeholder. Obviously they have the obligation to do this process. So Section 20, basically it prevents people from spending, or the freeholder from spending money on the block without consultation. Now the limit for Section 20 is £250, and that is inclusive of VAT. So it's a relatively low value in modern day senses, but when the legislation was first brought in, probably best part of 30 odd years ago, or maybe even longer than that, the £250 limit was quite high, and what it prevented was freeholders basically going out and getting quotations or giving works to their friends or whatever it was, and maybe fiddling the system a little bit, and obviously then the leaseholders would be lumbered with the expenditure under the terms of the lease. So now, if somebody wants to spend more than £250, so the freeholder, for example, or your enfranchised building, they have to consult with the leaseholders. Now that's £250 per flat. And the most important thing about working out whether or not you trigger Section 20 is actually the highest contributing property in terms of a percentage split on the service charge. So what I mean by that is, if you've got a block of 10 and you all pay equally, then your limit is £2,500, because each person has to pay £250. There's 10 of you, you're all paying equally. So if you all pay £250, that comes to £2,500. So any expenditure over £2,500 at this block of 10 that we've just described would have to follow Section 20 procedures. Okay. What's important to note is it's the highest paying person or flat or property or lease which triggers Section 20. So if you go back to our block of 10, so what's important to note is that it's the highest contributing split as per the leases that will trigger Section 20 procedure. And what I mean by that is that if you've got a block of, say, 100 flats, and one of the flats on the top floor pays, say, 20% because they're the massive penthouse on this big block of 100 flats, that flat has to pay 20% towards the bill. So their Section 20 limit is when 20% of £2,500 hits £250. So actually the limit on this particular building would be extremely low. And we do get that. I mean, we actually have a management building in our portfolio where there are 30 flats, and one of the flats pays 10% towards the bill. So that particular flat, when £2,500 is being spent on the building, they're paying £250 towards that bill. That's their share. So actually, despite there's 30 flats, so you think the limit would be higher, it's actually the same limit, the same £250 limit as our block of 10 that we referred to earlier. So you have to be a bit careful with that. So first thing is figure out who is the highest paying person or lease, if you like, and when does that person pay more than £250 towards the bill. That is your Section 20 limit for that building. There's no getting around it. That is the limit. So the limit could be very low for a massive building if you've got one flat that has a really high percentage. So the first stage of Section 20 is to send out the notice, and there's a pre-described form which I'm sure you can search on the internet and find loads of, but we have examples and things in the description below and on our website and various bits, but feel free to Google, because there's no prescribed physical format, but there are certain words that you need to go. So when you find it on the internet, you'll probably see that they all look very similar because actually the words are pre-described. So there are certain things you must have in there. So you must tell the leaseholders what you're planning to do, that you're planning to obtain quotations and do these works and enter into an agreement with the contractor to complete these works. You must give them 30 days to put forward their own tenders, so that then it's fair tendering and competitive, so they have been given the chance to put forward names of local contractors they may want you to obtain a price from. And then you have to say if there are any observations. So observations are a little bit difficult because they are not observations like I don't want to do the works or I can't afford them. They're not observations, they're just physically your opinions and statements. Observations might be you say you want to repair the roof, but my observation is that the skylights in the roof, for example, under the terms of the lease are classed as windows, and therefore any repairs to the windows should be charged to the flat that owns the skylights or the Velux windows or whatever it is. That would be an observation. So you're basically alerting the freeholder to your concern that if they're not careful, they end up paying towards something that is not their responsibility. So that's an observation. So once the first notice has gone out, you're free then to go out to tender, and say you've got 2 recommendations and you're the freeholder and you've got your 3 own people. You're duty bound to attempt to get quotes out of the 2 recommendations. Obviously sometimes people put things forward that are maybe contractors that don't really want to quote for the job, they're a little bit too small, they don't like the specification the surveyor's written, it's too onerous on them, who knows, so they may pull out. So you will find that the freeholder will also probably get their own 3 quotations. It is, for the legal requirements, a minimum of 2 currently, but good practice would say you need 3 quotations at least as a minimum. So they'll go off to get these quotes, they come back, and the ones that have been returned, then the surveyor or whoever's administering the contract will analyse the contents of the return, make sure that they are all like for like, there isn't any glaringly obvious mistakes, that contractors haven't missed something or mispriced something, for instance. And once that's all been done, then a stage 2 notice will go out, basically saying these are the quotes that we have got returned. We're proposing to go with whatever one. You don't have to go with the cheapest one, but if you don't go with the cheapest one, you have to give a reason for that, and the reason can be challenged and has to be sensible. You can't just say I like Peter's face. You need to say, look, Peter did the phase 1 and phase 2, and there's only about a 2% fluctuation in the price to the cheapest one, so therefore that would be a reason to do that. Obviously those reasons are in themselves subjective. Once you've done that, you give people 30 days notice to obviously review the quotations. They have an entitlement to come into your offices, or you can send it by email nowadays, and see the quotations, how they're all broken down and how that breakdown on the notice was concluded. Any observations need to be listed in there. So obviously if you remember on the stage 1 notice, they had an observations section. So any observations and the replies to need to be summarised on that notice. So what I mean by that is if someone had this big long conversation with you about the Velux windows and the rest of it, and it concluded that, say, the Veluxes were actually part of the roof because they're built into the slope and they've misread the lease, then the observation would be some observations were made about the roof structure and the Velux window arrangement. After consultation with the leaseholder who made the observation and review of the lease, it was concluded that these items are included or are not included, depending on what you are. So we're really looking for a short sort of paragraph summary, but it has to actually kind of give enough information for the person reading it to understand exactly what the observation was. Obviously, if they want to see the full string of stuff, that will be in the pack that you would have to present to them if they wanted to come in and inspect everything. So once you've done that, everything's all fine. Let's assume you've got the money in the pot. You are now free to spend the money. The very last thing you have to do is send out a notice of award. And again, this is basically just a semi-pre-described letter, but it needs to tell the leaseholder the contractor has been instructed, the contract's been awarded to Smith & Sons or whoever it is that you decided to go with. The works will start here. It will go on these days. It will go on for 8 weeks. There'll be between 8 and 4 or something like that. Any questions, please call this number. So that's a notice of award. So those are your kind of 3 stages. The first 2 stages are the stages where most people go wrong. The final stage is almost a letter you would probably send anyway, because you need to tell people that you've awarded the contractor the job and that they are now going out and getting on with the job, and obviously there's going to be some disruption. So once you've done all of that process, you've done the thing, and that's that. So I guess that kind of brings us on to, what if the job suddenly picks up, you suddenly something happens, there's a storm and the roof repairs are required and it's not covered by Section 20, insurance, but Section 20 is required. Well, you can do what they call dispensation, and I'll do a separate video on that in more detail, but you can apply to the tribunal to dispense with the Section 20 process, but you need to apply for that. You can apply for it retrospectively if you needed to act very quickly, or you can apply for it in advance. Please look out for future videos on that particular topic, but that will be interesting to the ones that really, where the job is urgent, it can't wait to the pre-described tendering process. You have to remember that stage 1 notice is 30 days, then the surveyor or whoever's supervising it needs to go out and get the tenders and the rest of it. That could take 4 weeks, and then the final notice is 30 days. And then if you've got to collect the money as well, you could be looking at a kind of 4 to 6 months turnaround for Section 20. So dispensation at the tribunal is a pretty powerful tool if you're in that pickle. So what are the consequences of getting it wrong? Well, the consequence is that you can only ask a leaseholder to pay up to £250. So if you take our block of 10 and say they all pay the same, so you've got a £250 limit for each building, so each flat, that's your limit, £2,500, and you spend £3,000. What is the liability? Well, the liability is worked out on the amount you spent over. In this case, it would be £500, because your limit's 2.5 on this block of 10, and you've spent £500 more than that by spending £3,000. That £5,000 is now divided by 10 people, so that's £50 each. So your liability is £50 per flat. So you can do the maths on that and say, well, 2 of those flats might be directors of this enfranchised building, so that's only actually 8 flats that have got to pay for, or maybe would claim £50. And then you have to also remember that not everybody will be that bothered about it, and for the sake of £50. So there is a case for, if you're only a little bit over the limit, you as the client or the freeholder or whatever, depending on your risk appetite, you may say, actually, I'm prepared to risk potentially not claiming about £50 for the sake of this poor lady on the top floor's got water pouring in. And if that comes to it, we will go and apply for retrospective consent to dispensate with the Section 20 process, as I mentioned on before. So obviously that is a risk appetite thing. Some people will want to take no risk, others will take a higher risk, and to some degree it will depend on the dynamics of your building and how you feel about your fellow leaseholders. Are they going to turn on you after the event? So I hope that's really useful to you. If you do want to know anything further, the best way for you to do and to keep it within this video is actually to use the comment section below. Type a comment in there, we'll give you a kind of short summary reply. Obviously, if you are in a pickle with your Section 20 and you're looking for help, we do just serve the notices for you and do this process. So if you self-manage and you just want us to literally guide you through the Section 20 process, we can do that. Obviously, we offer full management services services, so bronze, silver, gold. Have a look at our website and all the information is on there. But if you like the video, please hit the like button in the corner. Don't forget to subscribe to future videos. Hopefully these are very useful to you. And as I say, if you've got any questions, please do leave them in the comment section below, and then it will probably be myself personally replying. So I shall see you in the next one.